Hello everybody and welcome back to another Warframe video. Today we're going to be talking about the newly released Yareli Prime. She came out yesterday. I had the build ready to go, but it was kind of late, so I figured I'd push it forward to today because it's a little easier. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So first we're going to talk about her abilities. Her first ability, Sea Snares, is basically a damage vulnerability. That is the main draw of this ability. You send out water globules, really like that word, 5 water globules that seek out enemies, and they expand on contact, lifting them up in the air, giving them a damage vulnerability to all damage sources. With the build that I'm rocking, it's about 400%, so it is extremely strong. If anything, almost unnecessary. Her second ability, Marilena, is her primary form of survivability. It says damage reduction, but it is a damage redirection. 90% of the damage that you take gets redirected to Marilena, and she takes it instead. It is worth noting that Marilena does not benefit from any sources of damage reduction. So if you're running Eclipse, does not work. If you're running Adaptation, does not work on Marilena. The 10% that gets through to Yareli will be affected by that damage resist, but the 90% that gets redirected to Marilena does not get affected by that damage resist. Her third ability is, which I have subsumed over, so I'll have to quickly swap to a blank build. Her third ability is Aqua Blades, very forgettable outside of some niche interactions if you use Surging Blades, if you want to go down that route, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's fine, and it can do some good damage, but it requires a lot of setup, and it drastically changes the flow of the build. But Aqua Blades basically just does what it shows in the video. It just sends out some blades that spin around, doing a very small amount of slash damage, applying single slash procs, so it's just not worth it. It is not a good ability. And then finally we have Riptide. This is essentially her grouping ability. It does do some cold damage that scales with the amount of enemies that you pull into it, but it's really not worth focusing on that, and instead it's just a pretty average grouping ability. And then finally, her passive ability is really good. This is just basically a free 200% crit chance for secondary weapons, as long as you have been moving for at least 1.5 seconds, which is pretty much all the time in Warframe. You're never really not moving. Okay, so now let's talk about these shards. What are these? Well, every single one of these is for armor. And you might be thinking, why on earth would you do that? Well, one of the only sources of extra damage reduction you can get on Marilena is armor. However, she does not take into account your Warframe's armor, because Marilena has her own base armor of 50. However, these blue shards apply to Marilena. If you hover over Marilena Prime, you can see it on the right. She benefits from that bonus 1125 armor from the Tau blue shards, giving her an 80% damage resist, which drastically increases her EHP. This is borderline necessary, because if you don't run any of these armor shards, your Marilena essentially has 22,000 HP, or maybe around 30,000. You get about a 17% damage resist with the base 50 armor, and it is just terrible. So having this being up to basically 80% is a massive increase in Marilena's effective hit points, allowing you to have to recast it less and allowing you to tank more, essentially. As for the build itself, we're running Growing Power. This is mainly because you don't have to aura former it. Also, Growing Power is just really useful. A couple of other good aura options if you wanted to. If you're going for a melee focus build, you could go for something like Steel Charge, though I wouldn't recommend it considering her passive is built around secondary weapons. You could go for Corrosive Projection if you wanted to get an early instant armor strip. You could go for some energy regen via Energy Siphon. Or you could go for a mecha set if you felt so inclined. But overall, I think the Growing Power is the best for this slot. I think it's a good fit for her build. And yeah, that is what I would recommend. As for the Exilus, I'm running Prime Sure-Footed. Once again, this is not required. You could definitely switch this out for something else. You could really run whatever you want. You could run Power Drift, Speed Drift, Stealth Drift, literally whatever you want. I just think the Prime Sure-Footed is super good on her because we are not riding Marilena. So I will say, if you are using a build where you aren't running the Loyal Marilena Augment and you are instead riding Marilena, you do not need to run Prime Sure-Footed because you are immune to knockdown while on Marilena. However, for this build, we aren't riding Marelina, we are running the augment for it. So Prime Sure-Footed in this case is necessary. As for the rest of the build, obviously we are running the Loyal Marelina Augment, which essentially makes it so you no longer ride Marelina, and instead Marelina follows you around and casts C-snares on enemies with a 2-second cooldown, which is affected by efficiency. So you'll see my cooldown is 3.1 seconds. This I'm not too worried about, because to be honest, 99% of the time, if you've got any good weapon, the enemies won't need that 400% damage vulnerability. They just die instantly anyways. So it's kind of a bit of a mute point, though it is bonus damage every now and again, every 3 seconds essentially, but I rarely find that it actually functions because the enemies are too busy being dead. Then we're running Blind Rage, Transient Fortitude for a very, very hefty strength bonus, along with Umbral Intensify. This gets us to basically 300% ability strength, which gives us a massive damage vulnerability. It gives us a lot of health for Marelina, and it gives us a really nice 30% armor strip a second, giving us an around 3-second armor strip for Ephanimise, which is my subsume of choice over her second ability. I will talk about this more later. Then I'm running Prime Continuity to offset the duration reduction from Transient Fortitude, letting my Ephanimise have a good duration. Now, it is worth noting, if you aren't running Ephanimise and you're instead running something like Pillage or something that doesn't rely on duration, you can probably drop Prime Continuity in favor of something else, really. You could run Mecha Pulse for the Mecha set. You could run Precision Intensify if you decide to subsume over her 4 instead of her 3. There's a lot of options. We're then running Prime Redirection and Prime Flow for survivability and energy sustain, along with Arcane Aegis and Arcane Velocity for use with pistols. The survivability is really solid between the 90% damage reduction or the 90% redirection you get from Marelina, as well as Prime Redirection and Arcane Aegis. It's pretty tough to die, so I'd say that's pretty solid. As for the weapon of choice, I'm using the Occucore. There are a ton of secondary options you can use. You could go for a Nucore build. Bronco Prime's pretty good. Diplos, Cycron, Despair, Dualtox. Pretty much most of these that I've got favorited at the top will be more than ample. There are some fantastic options. I would probably say just try and make sure that it's a crit-focused weapon to at least make use of her passive. Obviously, you can just use like a Torrid. You don't have to use a secondary. I just am because why not? Why not benefit from the bonus crit? Also, I like the Occucore. But yeah, the Dualtox is another really fantastic option. I use this as well on her. But yeah, that is the build. I do subsume over her 3 with a Ephanimise for an armor strip. You could run Raw here. You could run Eclipse if you want a sort of DR offensive combo. That way you can switch between bonus damage or bonus defenses. But overall, I think Ephanimise is a pretty good choice, though it really is entirely up to you. You can run pretty much whatever you want as a subsume. Yareli is basically a blank canvas when it comes to this, and you can either subsume over her 3 or her 4. Both are pretty good options to subsume over. The only one you don't really want to subsume over is Marelina, of course, because it's her primary form of survivability. Companion-wise, I'm running my Nautilus Prime build for priming. This is not my DPS build, this is my priming build. And then this is my Tazakor build. I'm not going to go too much into detail about these. They're just very basic setups. And yeah, let's get into a mission so we can show how this kind of works. We're going to go to everybody's favorite Conjunction Survival. Well, not everybody's favorite. Some people don't like it, but I happen to like it. Alright, so at the start of a mission, you pretty much just want to pop your 2. That gives you your damage assist, and you can kind of see here that the survivability is good enough if you didn't steal a weapon, and Marelina will put the enemies up in the air. So that is very, very handy. And energy sustain isn't really that necessary, because you're typically killing more enemies than you're having to recast anything. We'll get a Ephanimise going. Who stole my weapon? Can they DE, please? Get rid of that. It is extremely annoying. But you can see she is she's basically a weapons platform. Anybody that tells you any different is wrong, unless they're running the Surging Blades build, of course.
All manner of technology
And even the grouping, you just don't need it when you're running Nautilus. Nautilus is the grouping, so. But I'll show you the grouping ability anyways. You basically put it down, groups the enemies up into the middle. You can shoot them, and then when this pops, it does a small AoE cold damage. Our Phalanx is down, so I'll recast that. But she is just an extremely, extremely effective weapons platform. Especially for secondary weapons. I should have really brought something to kill the Acolyte with. The Archon is not really built for fighting the Acolyte. But you can see energy is not an issue because you're not really spam casting anything. You're pretty much just staying mobile, making sure you're constantly getting that 200% crit chance. And yeah, the Archon is really nice for this because you don't have to worry about like being accurate. You know, you can just do what you're seeing. Minimizes down again. Recast that. As you can see, we're at 2 minutes and we're at 300 kills, so it's well over 100 KPM. And that's pretty much entirely down to what weapon you choose. You know, if you choose something like Vasto, for example, it's a great Incarnate, but it is not built for clearing rooms. Merlina is down, we'll recast her. You also do get, if I take Merlina off, when you cast Merlina, if I find a group of enemies that aren't tethered, if you cast Merlina, you'll notice your health goes invulnerable. During that invulnerability, you gain bonus health that then gets applied to Merlina's total health pool. So that is sort of like warding Halo or Iron Skin. So ideally, you want to pop Merlina during the heat of a battle when you're being hit by like a Jade Eximus or something like that. And that just gives Merlina the biggest health pool possible that makes it last longer. Yeah, there isn't really much to say about Yareli. She is a perfectly capable frame. She's not a nuke by any means, but she is a perfectly acceptable weapons platform that has some pretty nice bonuses for secondary weapons. There's a built-in grouping ability. Basically a free subsume slot over 3. Saw a Jade Eximus, but I think I killed it. I was going to try and showcase how much bonus health you could get. See if we can find another. I swear I used to always find like hundreds of Jade Eximus. And now I feel like there's just none.
The sentient is onto you. Look out for troopers.
Let's hope we can kill this Acolyte when it spawns in. You can also manually cast your bubbles, obviously, which, like, the damage vulnerability is very high. I'm gonna recast Merlina for this, just so that we have the most amount of health remaining. Yeah, you can see it is not ideal. However, you can armor strip them and damage vulnerability them, and that instantly makes it much better. Because the damage vulnerability can affect enemies that otherwise wouldn't be able to be affected. And yeah, that is Yareli. I wish I had more to say. I will quickly showcase an alternate build. So for those of you that want to continue to ride Merelina, and you don't want to worry about... You don't want to worry, you know, you don't want to use the augment that makes it so that it follows behind you. I will show an alternate build, which is very viable also. I won't do any gameplay on it because it's literally the same. You're just riding Merelina instead of having her follow you. Also, what did everybody think about the Yareli Prime's design? I think she looks absolutely incredible. I own her deluxe skin, but for the life of me, I can't put it on. I think her base Prime skin is so nice. Now let's take a look at the stats here. Where's my mouse? There it is. Yeah, we got 644 kills in 5 minutes. You know, it is more than ample. So if you're wanting to ride Merelina, this is what I would recommend. I will say I forgot to take off this and run Aviator instead. So you might be wondering why run Aviator. There's a weird interaction where when you're riding Merelina, it counts as being airborne. Because she's a K-drive, you are technically off the ground, therefore you are airborne. So you can also run aerodynamic. I just don't have I have an aura forward, so I can't fit it on there. But that is what I would run there if I was wanting to ride her. And instead of using Loyal Merelina, we're using Merelina Guardian, which makes it so that whenever you eliminate enemies that are hooked up by your C-snares, you heal 20% of Merelina's health. And upon healing her, you also gain a 200% reload speed and fire rate for your secondary weapons. They do not scale off strength, but the heal does. And the buff duration scales, obviously, off duration. But this is another really good option for a build. And you can stack this, and like I said, the aerodynamic as well. That would give you another 24%. There is also the Boreal set. So you could switch out, you know, Prime Redirection for Boreal's Hatred for another 20%. And then you can run a pull on, which is why at the start of the video you saw it Aminata run. Because this also allows you to run another Boreal's mod, which takes it up to 40%. There is obviously the... Not bro. Nope. 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 I cannot spell. There we go. There is also a Boreal's Anguish, but this is also an Exilus slot mod, and I don't feel like it's worth using this over Aviator, and there's pretty much nothing else in the build I would want to switch out. You could maybe drop Transient Fortitude, or you could maybe drop Umbral Intensify for it, but it's really like diminishing returns, and I think the bonus strength from Intensify is a little better. But this is nice because this does give you an extra, you know, an extra significant chunk of survivability. But yeah, that is Yareli. Let me know what you guys think of her kit. I haven't done a build on the compressor because I only just got it and leveled it. And it's pretty much will just be the same as the regular compressor. But yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying Yareli Prime. Let me know if you've already farmed her or if you're planning on it. Let me know if you bought the Prime Access. And let me know what you think about the design. This is my current fashion if anybody's interested in it. This is what I'm running. It's just the regular skin with black, white, black. And this is the gold from the Ember Heirloom. Because I don't like the usual gold, which is like this bright yellow. I like to tone it down a little bit. And then just a little bit of pink for the Mist Event Energy, because it affects these little... I don't know what you would even call these. Like the fins, I guess. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thanks, Yareli, for waving us out. Adios.